Tiffany Carlock, welcome to Freedom Over Fascism. I'm so glad you're here. I see you so much on social media, and you are so good at describing what is going on in the campaign, from the Kamala Harris campaign to the DNC to the Senate. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved in politics and what you see your role and your strengths are?
Actually got started on social media in around after 2016. I think that's when most people kind of got activated. Always loved politics, was social studies major, so but of course didn't go into the political fields or even pursue teaching. I just went to healthcare. So don't even ask how we got there, but I just got there. So politics has always been a passion of mine, but I never really used it as kind of a way to get, I was always informed, but I never was activated until 2016. And I think that was the difference in terms of like how things went in the trajectory of getting to where I'm at now. And so of course, when Kamala Harris ran, I really truly got involved more, and I felt kind of, this is obviously in 2019, I felt kind of like, okay, this is someone who can represent me. I like her. She's the best candidate. And so, we had the K Hive. I'm sure you've heard of the K Hive. Kind of how I got started, especially on social media. And then after that, and then of course Joe Biden, kind of took over. He was not nominated as the and the nominee. I felt compelled to help him, and so I did that. That's what was my I 2020. I figured I'd use my voice for good, and I did. And then after that election, okay, well let's raise the money, because my passion is really the Senate. Like, I love everything the Senate. Most people don't even know about the Senate or how it works. I want to know the rules, kind of how it works, to be more informative and help people to understand kind of everything that happens there. Because I have a passion for judges. I want people to understand how that works, and I figured I'll be the messenger. So I found everything about what was going on with the Senate in 2021. Obviously, we had bills that had to get passed, and it was important for people to know what was going on. American Rescue Plan, we had the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, these were big bills and structure, right, that people needed to understand. And so I kind of took charge in doing that. There was no one really talking about the Senate at that time, so I felt like that was kind of a lane that I could occupy. And in 2022, we had our own race here in Maryland for our governor. And so I really got involved with that. I started raising money, for Senate candidates in middle of 2021, because we had two Black women running for Senate. And so I wanted to really get involved in that. Of course, they didn't win, but it still kind of gave us a kind of a segue into money and what to do to help candidates and help. And then, like I said, 2022, West was running, and I love Wes Moore. He's my governor. Everybody knows Wes Moore now. He's pretty famous now in the political sphere. He's of course, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And he was ANC, so he actually and said, hey, someone from his team, and said, hey, Wes Moore wants to meet you. He likes the stuff that you're doing online. And so I ended up meeting him, and he was like, can you help my campaign? And I was like, of course, hello. Wes Moore, he's my governor, and he invited me to come to an event. He was having a open one of his offices. His team invited me. They reached out. They asked me to come. I said, yeah. I was like, sure. I mean, I live in Maryland. Why not, right? So, and I was already helping kind of like talk about the race. There was a lot of people running in that race, in the primary. And so he wanted to meet me. So I said, all right, fine. I go. It was great. I was kind of hanging out on the sidelines. This calm person was like, hey, you want to meet Wes Moore? I'm like, sure, why not? And then he's like, oh my God, I love your work. Can you please help me? And I'm like, okay, well, cool, sure. So that kind of got me into Maryland politics because before we've always had like really boring races here. There was really nothing going on. I mean, everyone just kind of got reelected. 2018, Larry Hogan was still in office. But this was the first time we had like a real like primary in a really long time. And so it was nice to help him. And then of course he got elected, which was awesome. And then we get to now 2024 and we have a Senate race, which is Angela Also Brooks, who was running for Senate. She had a really tough primary that she was running in, and so that was tough. And then I signed up to be I put in my paperwork to be a DNC delegate, and I got it, and so that's how I got to attend the DNC, which was amazing. So it's just been a kind of a road of like activism and going to events and doing things that I normally wouldn't have done, but I've got the opportunity to do it. And I think that was, from forming relationships with people, but also using social media to be able to help candidates and talk about the issues in the Senate and, races. And I don't like help every single person. I'm very picky about who I will help and kind of talk about on my page. And that's kind of helped to insight onto who these candidates are, what they do, what they're about, and they're seeing it from a different perspective. They're not seeing it from TV or from the media. They're seeing it from a real life person who is going to events and kind of telling the story of what is going on. And I think that kind of gives the authentic feel of what it is to be involved in a campaign, but not necessarily be a paid person on a campaign. I've never been paid, but it's also, I'm volunteering and doing all these different things. And like tell me that, it inspires them to want to do the same thing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Cause I do it for me, but if I'm inspiring someone along the way, even better.
Even better. I mean, I think that, well, the 2016 story where all of us sort of jumped in when I voted all the time. And to tell you, truthfully, I've always lived in a blue state. I went from California to Massachusetts. So I voted, but the thought of actually getting involved hadn't really even crossed my mind, to tell you the truth. And also social media wasn't what it is now and all that. And a lot of my guests have a similar story, like, oh my God, 2016, I woke up and what can I do because this is not okay. So I want to talk a little bit about social media. You have a really big platform now, and I want to know how that has been growing that, and how you feel in terms of being visible. Is that something that you feel is really helpful? One of the things that, say, Simon Rosenberg talks about all the time is that the advantage we have is that we are really activated and that we have a very large grassroots army trying to get from Kamala down to state ledge races going. And you're one of the, faces of that. How does that feel for you?
So there's a responsibility that comes with it. You want to make sure you're giving people accurate information. You become a trusted voice for a lot of people. So I think there's that responsibility that comes with having a large platform like that. I started from probably had like when I say before 2016, I probably had maybe 100 people that I was following and 100 maybe 100 200 people that that was I don't even think there was maybe 50 people that were following me. And then slowly but surely as I started tweeting about, I used to tweet about football. I mean, I wasn't on Twitter for politics. I would see stuff, but I would kind of just, comment. I never even posted. I didn't start posting until 2016. And maybe even not even immediately after 2016. It was I think the Kavanaugh hearing really was what kind of set me off. And then I felt like, okay, I need to use my voice and kind of talk about what's going on. So like I said, it's really hard like having a small account is great because there's no drama, no one's bothering you, no one's coming at you. But the moment you start expressing your opinion, then you're gonna bring on the people who are gonna disagree with you. But there's also really great people that also, agree with you or give feedback or tell you things that you didn't expect or you learn stuff yourself because there's things that I have learned. I mean, I'm not from PA, but I love PA politics. It's so messy and I always laugh about it because like you said, I'm from a blue state. I'm from New York. We had simple races. You go, you vote, and that's it. So the social media aspect is a little bit. I mean, it's time consuming too, right? I don't think people realize how time consuming being on social media is, especially if you have a large platform. My husband laughs. He's like, how do you maintain like all of this all day? And I said, well, it's actually like a full time job. I'm on
It is.
there. There's a lot of notifications. I'm trying to get through whatever. I am very interactive with people, so I'm constantly responding. So it is time consuming, but I mean, those are the kind of the cons of it, but the and also the people that are just downright rude, right? I mean, there's people that are rude, but the perks of it is that people, like I said, it can inspire other people. People are learning, they learn things from me, and again, most of the stuff that I'm putting on there, I have learned them myself, right? So if I see something that I learned, I'm like, okay, well, let me share this with other people. So I'm not selfish with information because I feel like if time to read it or know about it, then why not share it with everyone else? I know that people don't always have the time to read articles or necessarily, kind of watch and see what's going on. No one's watching a Senate hearing to hear what's going on. I mean, COVID, of course, we had more time, but now people are living their lives. They're doing their normal things that they were doing prior to 2020. And so people don't have the time that they used to. So I feel like I'm a journalist in any way, shape, or form. I feel like I can inform people about what is happening so that they can make, decisions and realize kind of what things is, right? Whether it's stuff about politics or culture or politics is really my main focus on social media.
So, one of the things that's been a really big conversation over the course of this campaign, and frankly, the campaigns before, but it's becoming much and more clear, is that we have to be using different ways to reach people, right? I talked to Stephanie Shriak, who is a comms person, and she was like, and I was talking a lot about message. She said, our message is fine. We're just not actually reaching people. We don't own stations like Sinclair does, so we have to do a better job of um, creating our own media and using our own resources. And especially in the last week, the legacy corporate media has been moaning and groaning that Kamala Harris isn't doing interviews with them. And oh my God, that makes her a bad candidate. In the meantime, she's talking to people like Alex Cooper, who have 5 million downloads a week, right? So the whole landscape has changed, but still that corporate media has a really outsized effect, particularly on older folks who sit there and watch TV, which I don't do anymore. And I'm on the older side now too, which is very sad. So how do you feel like you are reaching people who may not be interested in politics, but are interested in how their lives go, right? So I remember Walt's couple of weeks ago was talking to people who said, hey, I'm not really interested in politics. And he's like, well, too damn bad because politics is interested in you. Right? Do you feel like you're reaching people who just want to live their lives and, control their own reproductive systems and control their own healthcare and just have better access to good things, but don't necessarily feel like that is political? Do you get a sense that you're reaching those kind of people? Or are you mostly reaching people who are already involved?
I don't. But social media is such a weird thing because you don't know who you're reaching, right? You don't know who's on the other side of that camera. Like you don't know who's watching, especially on TikTok. You don't know who's watching, or even Instagram. Twitter, people I think are more interactive for the most part. They're like, so you kind of can see like age groups and who's watching. But on TikTok, it always amazes me because people will come up to me and like I'm at an event and this girl is like, "Hey, I love your TikToks. You're amazing." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she was a young girl. She was probably like in her 20s. And so you really never know who's watching. And so I feel like when when you're in a situation like that, you just try to be just yourself and just say what needs to be said. But you may reach someone who is in a different demographic than you, right? I'm there. My dad is on TikTok, like he loves TikTok, but he also loves MSNBC, right? He's kind of a little bit of both. Like he's retired. He sits at home and watches TikTok all day. He knows more about what's going on in culture and in different things about politics than I do because his algorithm is tailored to politics and all information that I don't have. I don't really like TikTok. I am not a TikTok person, so I am not scrolling TikTok all day. Whereas
which is good because that algorithm is good. I mean, you can fall into a
oh yeah,
hole that you cannot get yourself out of.
he spends a lot of time on TikTok, but then at night he's watching. Mind you, he's on his phone all day, but he's also watching. He's also yelling at MSNBC and cursing them out. So it's kind of a mix of both. So you don't really know. There are people that are politically active, and then there are people who are kind of like, okay, well, I just vote, and thank you for this information. I didn't know this. I didn't know about what's going on. Thank you for reminding me to vote. So you kind of get a mixed bag of people and kind of what they're interested in, and it kind of depends on what you're talking about, right? And we can't drive algorithms, so you don't know who is being pushed information on. Literally, you could watch one political video and then you get a ton of political videos, especially on TikTok. So you don't really know who you're talking to. But I feel like, and I think that's kind of the important thing of just being truthful, is you never know who you can land on. And I pride myself on being truthful about what I'm trying to say and being very intentional about my messaging so that it is going to the right audience. And even if you aren't political, you are still hearing kind of what maybe you need to hear to just kind of get out, like to get out the vote, or right now is get out the vote, or who is this person that is running in these races. Like you want to know the truth. The legacy media is not going to tell you all of the bad things about a candidate, nor are they going to tell you all the good things. They're going to tell you what they want you to know. It's a little scary when you think about it. So you have to do the research.
Right. So let's talk about that legacy corporate media. I spent a lot of time on here talking about how their motivation is profit, right? And there's a lot of really great new media like Courier, like a lot of the people on Substack in particular. There's a really very lively community of people who are independent journalists. But that legacy media just laps up everything that Trump does without too much, criticism. And so we're facing a moment where, because the corporate media wants clicks and views, they're allowing really bad information, particularly about North Carolina and hurricanes, which is obviously meant to turn people against the federal government, although the people in it know that they're getting helped. As a new hurricane is coming, so they're trying to create chaos because chaos sells, and the Republicans are trying to inject doubt, and it's all part of a coordinated campaign between Russian disinformation, Iranian disinformation, and Republican disinformation, right? China. And it all comes together in a way that the corporate media laps up as a way to get people engaged and enraged, right? Your dad is yelling at MSNBC the whole time, right? My in-laws, send me articles from the New York Times that of course I've seen, right? But they're like, is this true? Look how bad Kamala's doing. And we know it's because that, the right wing is sticking holes in the polling averages are meant to dissuade people from going out to vote. So how do you think about that, and how do you think we can move forward in a way that gets a little bit away from that engaging and enraging and disinformation and gets more truthful and activating information out there?
To your point, I think my daughter, she came to me last week and she's like, oh my God, hurricane stuff. I can't buy, these people are saying stuff that I don't understand. And I had to literally walk her through it and show her articles of these paid influencers who are pushing this information. And she's like, wow, I didn't know this. And I'm like, yeah, because you weren't supposed to know it. This is not stuff you're supposed to know. This is what I call an op or an operation that is meant to kind of, like you said, dissuade you from voting, disliking the federal government, and using tragedy to be able to sow chaos. And I think that is so unfortunate because these people deserve better, right? If you were in my grandparents were in a hurricane in 2024, they lost their entire house. We didn't have social media back then. I mean, we had it, but it wasn't like it is now. So people are hearing all of this information and they're believing it. And I was thankful that there were so many people that were pushing back on it. But I feel like we are constantly playing defense because we don't know what the next thing they're going to lie about is. So it's really hard to combat something where you don't really know what the next story is going to be to fight it, right? So you are now stuck in a pattern where you have to say, okay, well, fight whatever disinformation comes our way or misinformation, but you're always going to play from behind because it feels like these people are two steps ahead of us, unfortunately. And they will exploit any tragedy to points about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whatever it may be, and whomever they've done it with the migrants for years, right? The caravan is coming. I mean, these are things that they have exploited rather than trying to find a solution to the problem. It's all about making people fearful. And I don't know if there's a way to really truly combat what they're doing. And that's unfortunate. And I think we have, like you said, since 2016, we have really tried our best to fight the misinformation. But it's like sometimes it feels like a losing battle because there really isn't much you can do to prevent it happening until the media, the legacy media, actually steps up and says, "Hey guys, you got to cut this out. Why are you putting this story out when you know that it's false?
Mm-hmm.
Why should we, as people who are on social media, have to spend our time discounting what the media is actually saying? Why aren't they doing the research? Why aren't they the ones that are calling it out?" And I think that is the most unfortunate part of it, is that they've fed into the lies. It feels like they are part of the operation that is spreading the lies rather than calling it out. And I think that is really the most unfortunate part of it, because who do you trust in that, right? Who do you trust at that point if the media is carrying the message that we know is specifically being driven by the Republicans or by, we know Russia and China. And I mean, this is not a secret. It is out there. US officials have told us that they are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really unfortunate, but I really don't know the answer to the question, because I don't think there really is a way other than us being out there and telling the truth about it and hoping that people actually use their common sense and logic and say, you know what, maybe this isn't true. Maybe this is a lie. Maybe this is not how things really work. And it feels like we're constantly educating people on basic functions of the government, and that is tiring.
It is tiring, but I think that what you're saying is exactly what we need to be doing is people trust people they trust, right? So if we're out there talking to people we know, that's going to get us farther. But we also, I was talking to Scott Dworkin, who spends all of his time talking about how the corporate media is getting it wrong, right? And I asked him, okay, well, what do we do to get people to stop watching cable news? Right? And so I want to ask you the same question. We know they're doing it. Your dad is doing it. My parents are doing it. Everybody's parents are doing it. And there's not very much real journalism left. Like, I was watching clips of the Sunday shows yesterday, and why the hell is Tom Cotton still given a platform? Right? Like, why are we still asking, so did Trump lose? Like, that's a dumb question. We know they're not going to admit it. Like, let's move to, like, what are they going to do? This, I don't know what Project 2025 is a freaking lie. Like, let's move on. So do you have any sense of how you would like to see people be more critical, in the sense of critical thinking of corporate media, so that maybe they move on to different kinds of sources of information?
One thing I would love for people to do, because we talk about legacy media, but we are mostly talking about cable news and probably the New York Times, right? I mean, the New York Times, and there are still things that I enjoy reading in the New York Times. I don't love the salacious articles, but there are still good journalists who are part of the New York Times. So I wish that people would read more. I mean, honestly, I mean, that sounds so simple, but I do wish that people would take the time to read articles, because the articles are actually more objective than talking heads on TV. Because what cable news does is they have a host and they have people giving their opinion. They're not giving facts. I long for the days when we had a Peter Jennings, or we had, I saw somebody, it was Connie Chung, that she was talking about, how the state of the media today. And we actually had real journalists who would give us the news every single night. And we don't have that anymore. What we have now is, if you watch CNN, I don't know, I refuse to watch CNN. So I will watch MSNBC sometimes in the evening, but but I see the clips of CNN, and now what they've done is, like, Abby Phillips, she has like this panel. It's like a round table, and there's like 6 people on there. And I'm like, and they're just going at it. I mean, they're just giving their opinions. There's no facts. I was actually happy that, I don't know if you know her, but political girl.
Yeah, politics girl.
Yes, actually been on the panel, and I was so impressed by the way she just kind of told the truth, and you could tell she's not a media person. She's a content creator, because she knows the facts. And I think that was awesome, because you need people who are not bound to who they work for, to be able to just tell the truth. And it was, as much as I cannot stand watching CNN, when I see her clips that she's posting, I'm like, thank goodness you're there.
Right.
I think that I would have said that, 10 years ago, that a social media person is on and podcast. So she's not just a social media person, but I mean, it was to have someone counteracting the BS. So yeah, I think it's just a weird thing, but I really do wish people would read more.
Right. Well, it's kind of an interesting thing, because these content creators, Lee McGowan, Politics Girl, or Allison Gill, whose Mueller she wrote. Like, there are so many fantastic content creators, who are actually working for the people, right? Get some monetization. Some people get way more than others. I'm sure Lee McGowan is actually making money, and I'm sure Allison Gill is actually making money. I make $12 a month, maybe, if I'm lucky, you know. But it's really a much more direct way of reaching people. And the fact that the Democratic Party is realizing this, and so they're having content creators come to the White House and doing briefings, and I think is really, really smart, giving them more information and a better platform, because they're giving out better information in a more engaging way than all these people screaming at each other
The
on.
White House press. I think most people, when they watch, the questions that they're asking are not questions that we want to. I mean, I don't care why Joe Biden didn't, was at where versus being at the White House. And I loved his answer. He's like, there's phones, like there's
Yeah,
video. We have Zoom now. I don't need to be physically in the White House. And that is a testament to our technology, the times that we're living in, right? I mean, it taught us a lot about how we can work virtually from different locations. And but that they ask these questions like as if anyone else is thinking about these things is it's embarrassing to
right,
really and truly listen to the questions that they ask, and then they wonder why they don't get interviews, or they wonder why, going on Call Me Daddy. I mean, or she's going on All the Smoke podcast. I mean,
right.
these people are asking questions that the rest of us want to know. I thought both my husband, he's a sports person, and he knew All the Smoke. He watches podcasts once in a while, so he knew All the Smoke podcast. I've never even heard of Call Me Daddy podcast.
Yeah, we're too old.
Like that's not that I enjoyed both of those interviews because they were asking her poignant questions about who she is as a person, where the media would never ask her questions. They never ask her questions. I thought one of the in both interviews, I think they asked about mental health. Hello, that's a serious thing. Blended families. It was funny because they both asked similar questions, and I don't think these two podcasts have any crossover, right? But they ask similar questions because these are things that people like us want to know. We want to get to know Kamala as a person, not necessarily as a politician. While, of course, she is a politician and she's running for office, people want to know her heart. They want to know what she cares about, what is important to her. And that's how you connect with people. So going on those podcasts, actually, I think is a super smart thing because the legacy media doesn't ask those questions. They want salaciousness. I mean, I thought the one she did with Stephanie Rule was pretty good. Talk and ask questions. I'm 60 Minutes tonight is probably going to be very interesting. Howard Stern, sometimes can get a little crazy, but he was good with Biden.
No, I think that the Howard Stern we remember from whatever 15, 20 years ago is a very different Howard Stern than we see today.
Right? So we think of him as shock jock, right? I mean, that's how we think of him. But I think his audience is a little bit different now, and so I will watch that. I haven't listened to Howard Stern since I lived in New York and was on my way to school. My dad watching it, listening to it in the car. So it's a totally different era of media, and I like it. I think it's a good thing, and I think the VP like embracing it and the White House embracing it is pretty cool. Like even Biden before he dropped out, he was on Harmon's podcast, which was like totally out of like the element of Joe Biden, but it was still a good interview, and he asked him some really important questions, and of course he dropped out like a week later, but still enjoyed the conversation. I don't know. We've come a long way, but we still have so much longer to go in terms of even dealing with like corporate media is just horrible. I mean, they just are. It's very rare that you get people. I think like Robert Costa is probably one of the only people that I actually respect now, because even through the Biden, dropping out drama, he actually held his integrity. A lot of people didn't. It was bad.
It is right. And if you pay attention like we do, you'll see, the evolution of Dana Bash or and that there are a couple people, I mean, as you say on MSNBC, I don't actually watch. I watch clips, which is, like today, right? You can't actually sit through an entire segment, but I agree that the content creators are really reaching us, and the campaign is really smart. And what I found has been so amazing is that the moment VP became the candidate, the same exact staff flipped the way that they were messaging in a way that reflected her. And it was unreal. I mean, it was real, but I thought it was phenomenal the way that they could capture a different mood and a different sense of being on the offensive.
I think too, like I was the night of Biden, um, the horrible debate,
Oh my gosh.
actually in headquarters. This was like, okay, I mean, people were freaking out. I'm like the oldest literally like the one of the oldest people in there, and I'm like, guys, calm down, it's gonna be okay. Like I'm trying to be the mother and just calm everyone down because they really were freaking out. And so I think because everyone there is really young, like they get who to outreach, they get the language, they get what people want to hear. And I mean, even the whole brat thing, like that is a testament to them being super young and understanding kind of what influences people. And
Mm-hmm.
not to, I mean, my daughter, like I said, she's 25. She's Gen Z, and she's like, my mom is texting me like, "Do you know what brat is?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." So we're like, so I thought, when Kamala dropped out, to your point, it crossed all generations where people were excited from people who are, older to people who are younger, and all kind of aligned in that way to say, okay, well, maybe we love Joe Biden, but maybe we deserve something new. We deserve something fresh. And I think the campaign was really excited that they had that opportunity to be able to have a new fresh message. And could have been, Biden is older, so he had a very structured way that he wanted things, and everyone on the campaign. I mean, from Jen Dylan O'Malley, who's the campaign manager, I think she's like in her 40s, so it's not like people are super. We're about the same age, so I mean, people are younger. And they have a different perspective on what works. Yeah, people want to see the campaign fighting. They don't want, laid back, hey guys, everything's gonna be okay. They want in your face, Trump sucks. I mean, that's what they
Right.
want. They
They
want to
do.
see the Democrats fight, and so Democrats are now fighting, and people like that.
I think that's true. And it's so hard to get a read on where we are, given the fact that there's a constant stream of lies coming out of the other side in ways that can actually, putting these junk polls into the polling average, pulling it down makes people think that Kamala is losing. My parents and my in-laws are like, "Oh my God, she's losing."
And the
No,
junk
like,
poll thing is very interesting because they started doing that in 2022, and you could see kind of. And I love polls. Like I was a poll girl in 2022. I looked at every poll. I would analyze the polls. Like I was on it. This cycle, I can't. There's so many that I can't even really dive deep into the polling because there's so much junk that are people. I'm seeing names that I have never seen before putting out polling in Pennsylvania, and there are specific polls that are. I followed the 2022 Senate race. There are specific polls that are PA polls that everyone respects and cares about. I am seeing names that I have never seen before being thrown into the averages. So kind of, but in the end, that doesn't really help anyone, especially Republicans, because it is a false premise that these people are going to that it's a close race, but it really isn't. Right. So we saw that with John Fetterman. Like they had his race, I think the day before, it was like 0.5%. And then when he wins, it's like he won by like 5 points. And people were like, oh my God, I can't believe he won. Like, yeah, because these polls are being averaged out and they're not accurate. They're not accurate. And I just don't think Larry Sabato and I like kind of had a little back and forth in Twitter. And I asked him, I said, do you think that these polls are, I think I asked him, do you think it's the people that they're calling or do you think it's the pollster? And he said, I think it's the people that they're calling. They're just not that smart. And I was like, you know what? I kind of agree with you. You're calling the same people and expecting a different result. But these people are giving you the same answers. They're not informed voters for the most part. And they're complaining about the economy. Listen, there's things that people want to be improved. But to say this is like a terrible economy, that is propaganda. I'm sorry. It just is. And so the polls trip me out. My mom is calling me like, the same thing like you said. Your parents calling me. Oh my God, this election is so close. Even in Maryland, right? My mom is like, she's like the news and on her phone. She gets a notification. She's like, oh my God, is Angela gonna lose? I'm like, Mom, I'm out canvassing. I'm out talking to voters. I think she's gonna be okay. And being sold that it's a tight race between her and Larry Hogan. And I'm like, I'm telling you that it's not. I can tell you what the polls are gonna show before the polls come out. And I know where the race is at. The race was at in the primary, but no one wanted to listen to me. No one did, and until it happened, they were like, "Oh, okay." Listen, if you talk, my theory is, if you want to know where race is, talk to people that are doing the work on the ground. They're the ones who are knocking on doors. They're the ones talking to people. They are getting the comments in their social media. People are telling them how they're going to vote, what they're going to do, how they're going to go forward, and you can get a better trajectory than a poll. A poll is only talking to 1,000 people at one time, and
Who pick up their phones.
right, who pick up their phones, who respond to an email, respond to a text, and that is not a good sample of voters, right? You have a better shot of talking to people. Saturday we went to a festival, and we were, passing out, information, and people were like, "Oh, I already voted. Love Angela." Blah blah blah. I mean, there were people who just were not engaged at all, and they were like, "I don't want you. I don't want your leave me alone. I don't care about voting." So you're gonna get a mix. You can get a feel. Like, I mean, there was thousands of people there, and we were able to and we have about 30 volunteers who are out there just kind of. People love the stickers. Like, there are people that just so odd, because the things that entertain people, you would stickers, like, really. I mean, people were loving the stickers. They were walked out of there with green stickers on for Angela. So you just never know what. I'm like, stickers. I mean, you would think people want buttons. They like the stickers.
They like this. Yeah. I was in Maine. It's where family lives, and I saw a Planned Parenthood booth. And so I like zoomed my way over. I was at farmer's market. I was like, okay, just talking to him like I'm involved, on the national level, but this is really important because this is, not super swing state, but it's in play, right? And he's like, "Oh, do you want a T-shirt?" I was like, I want to give you money. And he's like, "A T-shirt?" I was like, "Nah, I just want to give you money." Like, really? I'll take the sticker, but really, I want to give you money.
Retains people always trips me out, because voters are so interesting. Like, and that, I think it's very much a social experiment to see how people really engage in politics, right? I mean, there are people that are super engaged. There are people that have no engagement, and you really don't know when you knock on someone's door. They're on the voter rolls because they're on this list, but you don't know how they're going to react, or you don't know what they're going to say, or even if they're going to open the door. And the people that open the door, like, I ago we went out, and the girl was like, she was a young girl. She was like, "Oh, my aunt, she is amazing. She loves Angela and Kamala, and oh yeah, we're all gonna vote." So she's like, this is not really my thing, but my aunt, she gives all kind of money to these people, and so I'm following her lead. So you really don't know how people are going to react when you talk about, and it's a hard thing. A lot of people don't want to talk about politics. I think more people are willing to talk. Even my husband, he's more engaged than he's ever. He didn't even vote before. No, I mean, it's to say, because I'm always pushing people to vote, but we live in a blue state. It really, it really didn't matter if he voted or not. But now he actually wants to be on the ballot to be a DNC delegate, so he had no choice but to vote for me. That would have been grounds for divorce if you didn't vote for me.
Right.
Registered to vote, and he obviously voted for me. But now he's voting in the election, and so he got his mail-in ballot. He doesn't even have to go to the polls. He doesn't. No one needs to see him. He can just fill out the thing and put it in the envelope, sign it, and send it back. And it's so easy to vote. And I don't think people recognize how simple it is to vote in certain states, especially in blue states.
In blue states. In red states, they make it as hard as humanly possible for a reason,
Yeah,
right? They don't want people voting.
especially in Mississippi. They definitely don't want people voting.
No. Well, even I did some work in Indiana. It's really interesting. So they don't want people voting. They don't want people educated. So they've taken civics out of the education. They don't want people to know the truth. They don't want people to organize. I mean, like, it's very clearly, attempting to recreate or continue the oligarchy, the white male Christian nationalist oligarchy that has been present since the
Fighting
founding.
so hard. They're fighting. They're their future while we're trying to fight for our freedom. And if we're on a collision course in this election of who's going to win the battle, and I really do hope that people take it seriously. And I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are taking it serious. I think there's still people who are apathetic. I think there's people who are in the middle who don't know. I don't know how you are just undecided at this point, but it makes no sense to me. But I think there are people who are still torn. There's people who know that Donald Trump is not a good person, but they still believe that he is good on the economy. And I'm like, how? I don't know how you figure that. Some people don't know Kamala, so they're kind of apprehensive. Then there's people that are, like I said, apathetic, and they think that no party is good. They think politics is insane, and they want nothing to do with it. So you're fighting a battle of trying to get people to do the most simple thing, which is to vote. It will take most people 30 minutes out of their day on early voting. There's vote from home. You can vote on a mail ballot. You can go on election day, which will be less people in the same place we were, like with Obama, where I stood online for an hour and a half to vote for him, right? I mean, we've come a long way since then, in 2008 and 2012. We've come a long way in terms of accessibility to be able to vote. And yet you still have people who are like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't have time to vote. Like, I have time to do other things. Like, this is your future at stake. So it's interesting to hear people's like rationale for why they are not going to do this or how they're going to do it. Or I will never force someone to agree to vote. If you tell me you're not going to vote, I am not going to argue with you. That's your prerogative to do. I think the what we're trying to find and what VP is trying to find in her interviews is the people who aren't informed. They just aren't informed about what's happening and why it's important to vote and what does this mean for you, right? I think that on the
Right. That's the
Daddy interview, I think talking specifically about abortion rights and why it's important to vote and this matters. So I think that is that if that was the demographic and what she was purpose, she did a damn good job. Because even I was like, okay, well, yeah, now I was inspired by what she was saying and all the time. So interesting kind of thing to see people react. And it was, I will say, the feedback on TikTok. I was actually on there this morning. Was a lot of people who were like, she did an amazing job. They loved her answer about being humble. That answer, young girls love that answer. Like, we don't
like, who needs to be humble?
what year is this again? Why do I need to be
Right.
humble? So it's like it's
Right.
simple. It wasn't even the purpose of the interview, but it was a thought provoking question that got an answer that actually like motivated women to be like, I don't have to have a traditional family. I can have a blended family. I can pursue my career and do all the things that I want to do. And no, I don't have to be humble for you men out there or you women who believe in the patriarchy.
Note. I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this. I had a great time talking to you. I think that you reach a lot of people and you make a big difference. And I want to thank you for coming and talking to us.
having me. I appreciate it, and I love talking to you as well.
All right. Take care. I'll see you online. Bye bye.